and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall and I'm a folklore researcher. Welcome to the first Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. I'm so glad you joined me. It's good to be curious. Most people are baffled at any suggestion that fairies might exist. In our modern Western society, telling people about your fairy encounter is a major taboo. The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast hears from people who've had experiences and want to share them in their own words. So whether you're already a believer or full of intrigue, come, open-minded and open-hearted. Simply listen and make your own mind up. To support the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast and find extra material, please go to patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. Thanks. Tonight we hear from someone who came face to face with an unrecognisable being in a remote part of Scotland. Like most people, they didn't set out to see a fairy. It just happened. The experience itself felt to them much like any other wildlife sighting. Afterwards, they simply tried to make sense of it all. This is the first time they've spoken publicly about their encounter. I hope you enjoy and appreciate his sharing as much as I do.
Time to
First, what I'll say about this is I've never given two thoughts to this before this happened. Obviously, being aware of stories of myths and legends, was never really considered it. So certainly this was not in my mind that particular night. Total surprise to me anyway. This was in a very remote part of Scotland. I went up there on holiday, rented a local cabin, which is in quite a remote area off the beaten track. And this particular night, this was about 7 years ago, when I was up there last. I was walking back from having my dinner at the pub. That's one of the reasons I tend not to speak of this, because people just say, yeah, you're drunk. But, actually, I wasn't, I'm not a great drinker. I might have had a couple of pints with my pie and chips, but certainly I was perfectly sober. And so I was walking up this small, dark, isolated track back to the log cabin. And then something ran across the track in front of me, from my left to my right. I had sight of it for a good few seconds, difficult to say exactly how many, but several seconds. Clear and unobstructed view. And I haven't got a clue to this day what I saw. But I would describe this entity, if you like, as human-shaped, small. By small, I mean probably up to my elbow, so quite short. Very, very pale skin, almost white, very pale skin. And what I do remember is very long, gangly limbs, arms and legs. And this entity, I think that's a good word for it, ran, as I say, from my left across the track. I ran away across the grassed area that I was walking beside. And as I watched it run away, I distinctly recall it looking at me over its right shoulder as it ran. And I watched this for a few seconds until it was out of sight. And I'm absolutely stumped as to what I saw, to be quite honest with you. I just saw it clear as day. And I don't know what it was, I was up there on holiday, very interested in wildlife and animals and things like that. And had it been any kind of animal, I would have instantly recognised it, because there's not that many, red deer or sheep or Highland cows, but it wasn't. It was very much a human figure. So I was a bit shocked by this, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't have a clue what I'd seen. There was no menace or aggression or anything like that. he looked a little bit startled to see me and ran off. So I went back to the log cabin, perplexed and a bit alarmed. And so I was thinking about this for the rest of the holiday. Anyway, at some other point during the holiday, I was looking through the visitors' books that was in this log cabin, a very old log cabin. People have been going there for decades. So I spent an afternoon raking through the visitors' book, looking to see what people had written about it. And on one of the pages, I found this entry, which really caught my eye. And it said something like, "There's a Yeti here. I know you think we're just saying this because we're children and you'll not believe it, but there is. I did see it. It was still on the lawn outside." And I was like, wow, what was that about, Yeah, a random entry in this visitor's book from like years and years and years ago from a child, And it really felt like that hit home there. I thought, damn, what have I seen? Still to this day, I don't know. You can go on the internet, you can do Google searches on Scottish myth, legend, folklore, creatures. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of images on there and you can pick things out that look similar. But yeah, what can I say? That was my experience. A few seconds long, but very impactful and remains with me to this day.
It is absolutely brilliant. The fact that it kind of looked back at you, and this is something that I'm finding a lot of people encounter actually, is that what happens is that they get some eye contact with you, which is quite amazing, isn't it, really? Do you think it wanted you to see it?
I think difficult to say, really. I mean, the sighting I had would be much the same as any other wildlife sighting, really, I mean, during that holiday, I remember out walking and a pine marten walked across in front of me. I just watched it trot away into the distance. It probably didn't know I was there or want to see me or anything like that. I just happened to be in the same place at the same time. I don't get the impression that it made itself visible to me for any particular reason. My own thoughts on this are that we just happened to be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
I got a start. It got a start and ran away. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Was there anything nearby that you think it may have come for or come from?
Nothing specific that I can think of. It's a very wild, remote place, and there are streams and the likes around there. Lots of moorland and heath and mountain, loads of trees. But I can't think of anywhere where it may have been coming from or going to. The whole area was very, very remote. Was
it dense woodland where you were, or was it quite open land on this path?
Quite open on the path. I mean, there were a lot of bushes and what have you, but there's no real plantations or forests around that particular area. I mean, close by, of course, but...
What kind of light was it at the time? Because even at night time, if you're quite far north, it's actually not that dark. Can you remember what the light was like?
I don't recall what light was like, but a couple of years ago, I was up in the north of Scotland in the end of June, same time of year, and it never got dark. It was just like semi-dark through the night. And this was the same time of year. This was the end of June. Now, I don't specifically remember what the light was like. But you're right, it doesn't get dark totally up there at that time of year. And certainly, though I cannot remember the light, I remember what I saw, and I could see it. So there was no confusion here. I did see it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Can you remember what the head was like in comparison to the body and the shape of the face and head?
I recall the body and the limbs as being very gangly and skinny. The body was slim as well.
I get a real clear image in my mind actually of your description, and I'm immediately thinking goblin.
There's so many different names for these entities. Depending on where you are in the world, they've got a different name, but when you look at the descriptions, they're actually quite similar. And two names that I've come across is Bochan, which is Bochan, I think it's Irish. And there's a Scottish entity which is similar, Gilly-doo, Ghilie, and do, which I think means black, doesn't it, in Gaelic? But, the same entity has different names in different, probably parts of Scotland as well. It's a strange one, isn't it? It's not like, if I'd seen a red deer, it would have been, oh, that's a red deer. I know what a red deer is like. And if it had been a roe deer, I would have very easily identified that. But this is just... a lot more ambiguous, really.
Mm. So the shape of the face and head, was it difficult to pinpoint that?
I wouldn't like to just speculate and make, just...
Did it have more pointy face or a more rounded face?
I would say pointy.
And it wasn't wearing a hat?
No, and I didn't realise, I didn't see anything that I would consider to be clothing, because I could see, the skin was very light. I mean, like, very light white.
Yeah.
And I could see the skin all over. It's difficult because you don't get that kind of view, is it? Like, it doesn't stand in front of you for 10 minutes, so you can take a selfie with it.
In that moment, you've got a million things going through your head. It's like, what am I seeing? What am I seeing?
Well, that's right. Absolutely. It happens, and you just I was quite taken aback, and I just thought, what's that? And then it's gone, and you think, well, what did I just say there?
So when it looked at you, you held each other's gaze.
Yeah.
What did you feel in that moment?
I mean, it was alarming for me because I didn't know what I was looking at. I was just quite startled. But, there wasn't any menace or aggression. Whatever I saw didn't seem to be panicking. It was just like any other wild animal, just saying, oh, there's a human, I'll run away. And just and did so.
Yeah.
So certainly, I mean, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but there was no reason why I should feel uncomfortable. There was nothing done or said or aggression or menace or anything like that. It was just saw me in a way.
Did you find that your body reacted in any way? I mean, maybe it made you stand still.
Stopped dead in my tracks. What on earth is that? As it ran away. Just saw it, rooted to the spot, trying to figure out what I'd seen, and watched it run away. And then that was the end of it.
Was it a particular time in your life, pivotal time in your life?
It was a strange time in my life, to be quite honest with you. It was very, very stressful. And I'd got away from all the stress. And it was my 50th birthday, actually. That's what the holiday was all about. My 50th birthday. That's why I was there. So it was a very special occasion. Yeah. It was very, very stressful. So I was just there to unwind and get away from everything. Might sound a bit of a corny thing, be at one with nature, if you like. Just get away from everything that was bothering me. And just enjoy the nature and the countryside.
It sounds like you achieved that, if you think about the encounter, to connect with nature in such a way that you...
Well, I mean, I have been up there a few times on holiday and other parts of the west coast of Scotland, and every time I go there, I have a great time because it is a beautiful, relaxing place.
It's like a meditation, even just walking home. Do you think before this happened, this just was not on your radar whatsoever? So before you saw whatever you saw, what would you say if a friend told you that they'd seen a fairy?
I would have been open-minded about these things. Really, I mean, you grow up, you watch films. I mean, I've read a lot of books. I read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I knew there was a legend and a myth behind it. Somebody said, "You believe in vampires?" I don't know. Keeping an open mind. I'd certainly not say no, because I just don't know. And the same with things like ghosts or any other kind of myth or legend. I don't know. And I would just really have a healthy respect for things like that. And certainly the fairies, leprechauns, goblins, whatever they call, they'll be like, well, might exist or it might not. I don't know. I mean, I've never seen anything before, and I've never seen anything since. But certainly I've had some strange feelings, if you know what I mean, in another couple of places.
Do you think maybe having that experience kind of opened a door to a sense of another world? So maybe becoming more in tune.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly maybe it's opened my eyes and my perspective on things. Personally, I don't think you can draw these entities in. I don't think you can do something to make them appear in front of you, can you?
No, I agree.
I think it's a mindset, and if you clear your mind from all of the poisons that are there from our life in supposed civilization, I think maybe that would help. But yeah, I mean, other parts of Scotland. I mean, I've been on the Western Isles before and walking in some very remote places, and you just feel you're not alone. It's very tranquil and peaceful. And I've heard noises that I didn't know what they were. And you think,
Yeah.
What is that? Can't say anything. You think, well, if I knew, every animal or bird that's up here, I would probably know. There's just things like that, I think, make you more aware.
Yeah.
It was a nice experience. I think it was a nice experience, really.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really precious, amazing experience. As you say, lots of people say that they want to see fairies, but you can't make it happen. It's just something that happens really randomly. It just happens really unexpectedly. And that's just the nature of these things, and I think definitely being in the right mindset, as you say, and I do feel personally that your connection with nature was really the kind of the door opener here. But what an amazing 50th birthday memory.
Yes.
Who's going to remember that?
I've never really considered these things at all in the past. Yeah, I mean, read things, watched the TVs, the movies, all of this kind of thing. I'd be like, respectful, but it never crossed my mind, you know what I mean? It's not as if I had a fascination with anything and I'd researched it and read about it. I hadn't. So I would never ever have expected anything like that to happen.
No.
And it did.
Time to
So, big thanks to our first guest. And just a few thoughts really. The encounter that we heard tonight is fairly typical for a fairy sighting. You have a person simply going about their business when all of a sudden they have this phenomenal experience. We'll enjoy deeper discussions on the subject of fairy sightings on later episodes. But for now, it would suffice to say that the usual reaction to otherworldly experience tends to be as follows. So, on the subject of ghosts, people are pretty okay with that. They might not believe in ghosts, but it's kind of our understanding that ghosts are the spirits of people who are no longer alive. Most of us can deal with that. We understand how that might work. Then we have UFOs. All right, so they're a bit more weird, but the potential for other life forms in our vast universe that we can see with our own eyes in the night sky every night, well, yeah, okay, most people can imagine that's a possibility. But when it comes to fairies, it's just, no, that's ridiculous, childish, impossible, until you see one yourself. For the most part, our modern Western society is so sure of its wisdom, so addicted to rational thought, hard evidence, sound conclusions. They simply can't compute that they may be as yet undetectable parallel existences to ours right here on Earth, and that sometimes, for whatever reason, we may catch a glimpse into each other's realms. For the moment at least, telling people about your fairy encounter is still a major taboo. The immediate realization is that other people will assume you were mistaken, maybe under the influence of substances or hallucinating due to some kind of illness. Some people are lucky enough to be able to entrust their encounter to an open-minded or knowledgeable third party. But many of these stories go untold. For some, the experience is simply so precious and personal that, quite rightly, it doesn't feel appropriate to share. Others feel afraid to share in case of retaliation from beings in these unknown worlds. It's worth noting here that not all experiences are wonderful, some are terrifying. Many would prefer never to speak of it again, but for most, it's really the fear of being ridiculed which stops them from speaking of their encounter. Let's not forget that no matter how civilized and evolved we feel we are, there is so much we don't yet understand about this universe. The beauty of life is that we explore the unknown together, for a time. We may never find the answers, but we can enjoy the adventure of seeking and expanding our conscious awareness. Whatever your view, thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me again to hear further accounts of modern fairy sightings. Much love to you, and always remain curious.